who knows where, drinking beer and betting sports. It's the Better or Worse podcast with Mitch, Randy, and Jersey Joe.
What's up, guys?
Oh, I thought the music ends. God, I was just getting into it.
You're having time, aren't you? Getting into the music. Hey, listen, today Drew and Randy were joined by Kevin. And Kevin's got quite a really cool story. He was a former, I want to say, walk-on in Division I. And
Correct.
Was made some decisions to stay in sports, but go a different route other than playing professionally. And he's heavily involved in overseas, stuff that's happening overseas. And we're going to get to that in 1 second. But since I got him on here, and since we just had, we had a crazy weekend for sport. First of all, number one, we're not talking about the Super Bowl at all. We're going to talk about it all next week. But on that same day that we had those two great games in the NFL, if anybody wasn't paying attention, we had two incredible games in college basketball that day too, which made me just say, wow, this is why I love college basketball. The Big Ten showed out. In your school, Drew, I got to give a lot of credit to because Ohio State came to play in Purdue. I thought both teams played phenomenal. And the other game was right down the street here in Marquette and Providence. Did you guys get a chance to see those games? Because I couldn't believe what I was watching. I thought they were incredible.
I caught the second half of the Buckeye game, and that was definitely wild. The resilience for the whole second half, they kept cutting it. Purdue kept pulling the lead back up, and they just kept fighting and eventually got in the spot they wanted to, but couldn't pull it to.
Yeah, I only caught some of the highlights. Obviously Zach Edey's tough to stop, and then the Marquette Providence game. Actually, my favorite part was after the game, with Coach Cooley defending his guy Justin Minaya for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah,
which was I don't know if you caught that.
Listen,
but that was
I didn't, and he is well loved here. He is big here, Cooley.
Oh, yeah.
So the interesting thing about first, the interesting thing, I'm going to go back to the Ohio State game in a second, but the interesting thing about the Providence Marquette is I'm still impressed with Shaka Smart. Okay, I'm impressed with everything that guy's doing. And Randy, I know it's not your style of basketball, but let me tell you something. That guy takes people out of their offense. He takes them completely out of their offense with that defense he plays. And he doesn't have shooters. He's got one morsel, is the only guy that can shoot. Outside of that, it's just watching them. It is organized chaos is the best way to say Marquette basketball. It's organized chaos. And the way he coaches, when you see him coaching those players, you can tell why he gets the most out of his players, I think. I think he does a great job coaching. I think he's just a phenomenal coach. He talks to his players like men. And if you're a player, you just got to love playing for him. What are your thoughts, Kevin? I mean, you come across circles and players all the time.
Yeah. I actually so I got to see Coach Smart when he was at VCU. So I went down there for a couple of practices, and like you said, he's a guy that you want to play for, right? Like he shows his passion and he wants to, as bad as he can, get out on the floor for you, but he can't, and so he makes sure he makes that apparent to you, right? He's a player's coach. He knows when to scream, when to yell, when to jump, but also when to treat you and like grown men and pull you to the side and tell you what you need to hear. I think that's why his guys give him 110%.
Yeah, I'm always like, I saw the TV cut in, and they cut in on him when he was talking to his huddle, and what he had to say was, let's get the shots we want, not the shots that they want. And I'm like, man, that's a it's a very smart thing to say, and he said it in a very mellow tone, not stressed out, not anything. I'm amazed by watching him coach, and I'm amazed by Providence being in first place in the Big East right now, because coming into the season, I wouldn't have said that. Not with their point guard being Durham from Indiana, who now has made a complete fool of me, because I would have said he would have been a liability, and he's turned into a phenomenal point guard for them this year. Still can't shoot. He's going to shoot 25%, but he's running the show for him. And Horschler down low for him. They got Nate Watson, who's playing incredible at center. He's another coach of their candidate in Cooley, I think. Um, Getting back to your Ohio State, Drew, I would say Liddell finally showed up to be the guy, the NBA guy that everybody's been expecting. That guy nailed some big shots. It
Yeah.
seemed like he wanted the ball late in that game. He filled the role that we kind of talked about last week, where we were all talking about who's going to take control of that game. And I never thought Purdue was playing bad. I just thought
No.
Ohio State was playing phenomenal to be able to play with them in Purdue. Purdue was a phenomenal home team. And when you have a 7'5" center or whatever he is that can stand out there and doesn't need to jump to dunk the basketball, and then you've got an NBA guard out there running around doing the things that is it Ivy? Ivy's their guy, right?
Yep.
I can't believe how good he is. And then you still got Hunter and Stefanovic, and Gillis is kind of just the scrappy guy now. And to me, a double-double machine in Williams. Somehow, Ohio State hung with that in Purdue, and I was just amazed by it. And I thought that helped the Big Ten overall come Selection Sunday. Was watching that game. I'm like, that's going to go a long way for those guys that are on the border. And I think we're going to talk about some of that stuff in just a little while when we talk about a couple of the games tonight. But what I want to get into right now is I kind of want to talk to Kevin about his background and where he's come from and where he's gone and what he's doing now. Because he's got a very interesting story in what he's doing. Can you give us a little background on where you're from and where you went to school and what you ended up doing?
Yeah, definitely. So I appreciate you guys having me on. I am from Montgomery, New Jersey, which is in central Jersey, right outside of Princeton. And I was your, typical high school player. I would say pretty good. I thought I was pretty good, but didn't have any Division I offers. And so, when choosing to go to school, I had to choose between a handful of the Division III schools that wanted me. Didn't really get much love from Division II to get a scholarship, and then there was the Division I schools that I had on my list that were important to me academically, and so Quinnipiac University was one of those. And when I went up and visited, I just fell in love with the school, everything non-basketball related. And then when I got to take a tour of the new arena that they had just built the year before, and Tom Moore had just gotten there from being Jim Calhoun's assistant at UConn for 13 years, and it was just it was kind of icing on the cake. So I just had the opportunity to walk on, to try out essentially for the team, and
So when you went there, when you enrolled in school there, you didn't know
Correct.
You were going to try to play basketball.
I knew I was going to try.
You knew you were going to walk on.
Yep.
Okay.
I went in. Well, I knew I was going to try. I knew I had to try out. I knew nothing was
Yep.
guaranteed, and that was kind of
Yep.
the risk that I was willing to take at that point.
Yeah. And so in high school, what were you, a 6'1"? Were you a 6'2"? Were you a guard? Where were you?
5'10" point guard. 5'10" point guard. Didn't really score until my senior year. So just kind of a 3-year varsity starter. That was solid. Could handle the ball well and dish it, but nothing jumping out on the highlights or dunking on anyone. That's for sure.
Yeah. And at that time, how long ago was this? 10? We looking at 10 years?
So no, more than that. So 2008, I graduated high school.
So 2009, you were walking on 12 years ago. And where was, at that time, are they still playing the same teams now that they were playing then? Is it the same?
Then when I was there, it was in the Northeast Conference.
Okay.
So it was like us and Robert Morris and LIU were like the main schools at that time. Wagner for a little bit when Hurley was there, because he was there when I was there. And then after I had graduated, they moved to the Metro Atlantic, which they're currently in.
So when you're walking on and you're out there, what's going through your head? What are you saying to yourself? I have to prove what? What do you have to prove to feel like you're going to make the team?
To be honest, it was, at first it was just a different level. Like a lot of people think that they can play at the next level, whether it's Division III, Division II, or Division I, but especially for a guy that's 5'10", I'm walking out there with, 6'6", 6'7", 6'9", 6'11", 270. And I'm like, I don't even belong out here. Right. And so at that point, it was just very clear, my value that was going to be added to the team was just to be a team guy, right? To clap when I needed to clap, to dive on the floor when I needed to dive on the floor, to be a leader on and off the floor, not to do anything stupid, to get good grades, and just to be, a good face for the team and the community. And then anything above that was icing on the cake for them.
Wow. And wow. It's 5'11". you're playing with guys
5'10".
6'7", 5'10". We'll go 5'11".
I wish I was.
Give yourself that inch. Give yourself an inch.
I was listed
Yield.
5'11" for sure.
What was the? Do you remember your best game in college?
Oh
Your
yeah,
favorite game?
I remember every single point, and I scored all 7 of them.
You scored 7 points in college, and what? All right. So, but you still. Is there anybody in the NBA? Did anybody go from the NBA that you played against or maybe lined up against?
Yep. So Jeremy Lin and CJ McCollum were 2 guys that we played. So when Jeremy Lin was at Harvard, it was the first time that I saw him, rip baseline and dunk on one of our players, and I kind of didn't know what happened, and that was Jeremy Lin. And then, CJ McCollum was as skinny as he can be. If you've seen the infamous picture, and we actually went to Lehigh to play them, and I'll never forget. He gave us, I think it was 27. He gave us his freshman year. So, yeah, those are 2 guys I say are pretty good at basketball.
Wow, interesting. And when you were there, you focused on grades. I mean, I'm assuming. And did you have an idea of what you wanted to do after school?
Not until late. I mean, I got a degree in finance and economics, which makes me sound much smarter than I really am. I just kind of did it to do it. And I just knew that, after having the internships, the sales and trading, the Wall Street path, it wasn't really for me. Sitting behind a desk wasn't really for me. So I just wanted to combine my passion for the game and people and business, really. And I didn't know what that was. And, you watch Jerry Maguire once and everyone wants to be an agent. And that was kind of my path, to be honest. It was like, oh, that seems cool. I have the basketball background, and maybe I can give it a shot and see where it goes. And that was kind of the seed planted.
And Drew, isn't that what you're in school for now? Are you in school for like sports management?
Sport industry with communications minor, but I'm looking to go more like marketing, graphic design path. But
well, do you have any questions for a guy that is kind of, and we're going to get into his current, what he's doing currently, but the path that he took and the mindset that he took going in, do you have any questions for him?
Yeah, I mean, I know everyone in sports says in sports it's so much more important with connections. Would you also agree with that?
100%. I mean, the good thing is there's no formula for success. Like there's no magic formula. Yeah. But it's a industry that is so oversaturated that everybody wants to be a part of. So you have to find a way to differentiate yourself, and that could be one of many different ways, right? You can do something better than everyone else. You can work smarter and harder than everyone else, or you can get lucky, or it's a combination of all the above, right? So it's just when you're applying to jobs and when you're trying to figure out what you want to do, you just got to realize same thing for me in my path walking on. Like everyone wants to be a Division I basketball player, so why is it going to be me when there's the guy to the left and the right of me who are pretty much the same, right? Or somebody in your case that wants to work for free or work for a lower wage. It's tough. But build your relationships as much as you can, and don't box yourself into that would be my main recommendation is don't box yourself into a certain job that you want or you think you're going to be good at or you think you need, because there's so many different paths in the sports industry that sure, I'm an agent now, but who knows what I'm going to be in a year and 10 years. It's all very similar.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you kind of led into you're an agent now, right? And that's a very interesting path for a player to kind of go right into that line. That's not a typical path for a player. What was there something that happened while you were playing that made you want to be an agent and maybe try to work better with players than what you saw happening, or what caused this path?
So it wasn't really. I think that seed was planted originally. Like, hey, this is like I kind of have earned my respect. I can't put the ball in the hole as well as these guys, but they look up to me or they look to me for other things, and ultimately they trusted me. And so that was something there where it's like, when you get into the agency world, which is, I guess what we'll probably talk about here shortly, it's a wild west, right? And so at the end of the day, your relationship with the talent or the player is what, trumps everything. And so that seed was planted, but actually my first job out of school for a few years was more event management. So we produced and managed college basketball events at MSG and the Barclays Center at a small sports marketing firm in New Jersey. And then a couple of years into that, I really made the leap to go from event management to talent management because That seed kind of I guess sprouted to fruition, and that idea was there, and so that was kind of the leap that I took into from school into the agency world a couple years later.
And as far as representing players, what type of players are you looking for? Like what are you looking for is trying to help players?
So that's the $1 million question, right? Is where should you look? Because
Yep.
from a representation standpoint, there's really two paths. You're either an NBA player, or I
Yeah.
guess there's kind of in between. There's the NBA player or the overseas player, or the in between is like guys that could probably make the G League or maybe make the NBA get an NBA contract at some point. So when you're recruiting these players, that's when everything comes into consideration of, well, what size is your agency? Are you an independent agent like myself, or are you a part of a Wasserman or Excel or one of the big boys, right? If you're one of the big
Yep.
boys, you obviously have more connections, more a longer reputation, and most importantly, cash flow, right? And capital to be able to invest in certain things and offer bigger and better, and grass is always greener type conversation for players. And so someone of my kind of path really has to look for the guys that are almost under recruited, right? Like a guy that I think, hey, he's better than people think he is. And that's step one, is to identify those guys that aren't, because at the time it's like Kevin Tarca goes into a meeting versus a Rich Paul. I wonder what's going to happen there. Kevin Tarca doesn't even get that meeting, right?
Yeah.
And so if I'm going after a guy that I think can play at the next level, that's the first part. The second part is then having players understand that, look, I get your dreams of the NBA, but realistically, that's not going to happen, right? So it's that balance of like giving them the confidence, hey, you could play at a high level, but almost telling them that their dream of playing in the NBA is not realistic. So that's the tough part, because as we know, everyone wants to be in the NBA, right?
And any specific places you look in, like college basketball, like conferences, geography, region, anything like that? Or is there anything that you focus on?
So I would say the first couple of years, the answer to that was no, because I needed to get guys from anywhere, right? Like anyone that would take my call anywhere. A guy from Portland, a guy from Drake, and then obviously my alma mater was a little bit easier in Connecticut. So all across the country. Now it's kind of in the Northeast, So I really try to identify like the mid-major guys that I think can play for a long time, and they understand that they might not be the draft board players. Also, there's starting to be a new trend of, I don't know if it's a new trend, but the high major players that maybe don't have a lot of production. Maybe it's 4 points a game, 5 points a game, but the size, the athleticism, being a high major player, they can still play for a long time overseas. So those guys that kind of trickle under where the big time NBA agents are recruiting, or the big agencies are recruiting, those guys as well. But like I mentioned, the Metro Atlantic, where Quinnipiac plays, the Ivy League, the Patriot League, the Northeast Conference, schools like that.
So is Quinnipiac, is there someone right now in Quinnipiac that you are currently looking at that you see as potential, since it's your alma mater?
Yeah, definitely. There's always guys. I mean, anyone on the Quinnipiac roster, I don't care if you scored as much as I did or you're the leading scorer, I'm always going to try and help you. They definitely have some interesting guys. Jacob Bergoni, who's Australian, who I think can play for a while back in Australia. Kevin Marfo, who 2 years ago was leading the country in offensive rebounds per game, who ended up going to Texas A&M and then back to Quinnipiac this year. So he's he has a high ceiling as well. And so there's a lot of guys. I think there's guys that can play at the next level. It's just a matter of what they're willing to sacrifice in order to get there.
So there's a team that I've followed for a couple of years. They had the same starting five last year as they have this year. They're a top 25 team that's come out of nowhere. It's St. Bonaventure. And St. Bonaventure has 5 guys that I think all 5 guys can play in Europe. I don't think any of them will get drafted, but I think all of them could play very good over in Europe. They have a guy that's 6'10". His name's Osuri Omanyari or something like that. So he's like a 6'10" center. Their main guy is Lofton, but they also have Attaway. They got Welch and Holmes. To me, these are guys that I think will end up having long careers over in Europe because they are talented. They're like that. But one of the things that we discussed a little bit last week is part of your job isn't just to get them signed, but to prepare them for the world of difference, the culture. Would that be the right word? Culture shock?
Some places, it depends where you go,
Yeah.
and that's part of the conversation. So, if kind of, if you backtrack to the conversation and putting yourself in my putting yourself in my shoes in the conversation with the player, it's like, okay, well, maybe they get to the point where they're like, fine, I'll try for the NBA, but if I don't make it, I'm okay going, overseas. I'm okay going to Barcelona to, eat some paella and wine on the weekends and make 65, 70K. And it's like, whoa, no. Like, no, unfortunately, that's not it. Like, that's not it. You might be going to Ukraine, which is not the best place to play right now. I mean, it actually is a really talented league, but obviously with the geopolitical stuff happening, or you're going to, a village in Hungary, or you're going somewhere where, quite frankly, if you're a Division I player, and you go overseas, unless you're like a draft pick or a second rounder or something, you go to a really high level, the facility's not going to be anywhere near the same. Most likely, a lot of players on your team won't speak your language. You're not going to have Wi-Fi everywhere. You might have to drive on the wrong side of the road if you get a car. And there's going to be so many attributes to that it's like, whoa, this is just major. Like, I don't want to deal with this. And by the way, you might not get paid on time if you get paid at all. And if you're getting paid $1,000 a month. Some people can make 3, 4, 5K a month, obviously, but it really depends on the talent level, where you're playing. But all these attributes, it's like going even from a Quinnipiac. I mean, we were blessed with an unbelievable arena and gear and Nike deal and you name it. To overseas, forget about it. Can you imagine UNC to overseas, or Ohio State? I mean, it's like night and day.
And I'm assuming some of them are like gymnasiums, like you played back in high school. Is that where some of these guys are playing, like gymnasiums like that? Or
absolutely, some are. In Portugal, it was a high school gym. Some of them, right? So, and that's the other crazy part too. So, the bottom half of the league, or the bottom couple of teams, you play in a high school gym. Then you go to Benfica or Sporting, which are the top 2 teams that have huge football or soccer clubs over in Europe, and they have unbelievable sold out stadiums, which is crazy. But yeah, you're Luxembourg second division. You're playing in a high school gym. Obviously, you go up to the EuroLeague, Euro Cup levels. Real Madrid and Barca and CSKA Moscow and in Belgrade, Serbia with Red Star. That was the craziest environment I've ever seen. So it's everywhere in between.
From an agent standpoint, I mean, what is your goal? Like, what is your end all goal? What's the mountaintop?
That's a great question. I think, as we discussed last week or 2 weeks ago, I'm kind of in a stage where I'm trying to figure it out. It's been a process. It's been an up and down process in the agent game, because I enjoy it. I think I'm good at it. I love it. But there are pieces of this industry that I think are, I guess, pertaining to the Wild Wild West, where they're out of my control. And so in my mind, it's always asking myself, can I make the most impact in this vehicle of being an agent, right? Because I enjoy helping players along their career trajectory, whether that means making $1 million because then everyone wins and everyone's happy, or that means realizing that you go overseas and you don't want to play for $400 a month and not understand the language and not have fun, and you want to utilize your basketball network to become a coach or to become an accountant or to go do something else in life. And so, really preaching to my guys that basketball at any level, I don't care if you're in high school, college, or as you go up the ladder, the pyramid, you need to use that to open up doors for the rest of your life. And that's what I enjoy. And I can do some of that with being an agent, but it's kind of limiting, especially with some of the new rules that are coming across from FIBA. And it makes it difficult, and there's less accountability, and it's just very different than the NBA. And so I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, it's a big question mark.
Do you start to scale down with the new NIL and start to look at college and high school, representing some of them?
Yes. So there's a handful of different paths that I can go, or any agent can really go in this field, even if you take off the label of agent, right? The NIL is an unbelievable opportunity that's going to continue to adapt and open up doors for athletes all across the states. So you can go the NIL path. I started representing coaches last summer, because that was kind of a little adjustment that I made, because it's kind of in that same circle, or that sphere of helping everyone, right? So if I can represent a coach and then help him identify, him or her, what players they need at the next level to succeed, that'd be great, because I evaluate a lot of players. And then vice versa, I can help young players come over here to college if I represent a college coach. So I represent a college coach, and I also represent a coach that coaches professionally overseas. So that's another path, a front office path. I mean, there's a lot of different paths.
But Kevin, by rule, you can't I mean, you can't really help a college player because you're an agent, correct?
So that's where the gray area comes in. So technically I can represent a student athlete as a marketing agent. Now, every state's different with the rules that you have to go through. Some states require you to get your paperwork done to have a license. Some states don't have any rules. Utah happens to be one of those. To my knowledge, there's 50 states and everybody has different rules. So this year has been pretty crazy to see some of these deals that your starting quarterbacks and your top 10 NBA draft picks are getting. We're talking like high six, some seven figures, and then others just have no idea. Right. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Randy, your school's looking for a new head coach. Can you make an introduction for Kevin over at Michigan? I mean, Harbaugh is gone. Harbaugh is gone.
You're picking the scab always, right? Yeah.
Having a little fun with that one.
That's funny.
So, all right. Again, I go back. So you're looking at like you mentioned Yale, the Harvard, stuff like that. When you're looking at a player, do you literally say, I think this guy can do it for 2 years or 3 years or 5 years? Or is when they go over there, are their contracts 1 year at a time? Are their contracts 5 years at a time? What are their deals?
Great question. So for the first part, I try to identify that like, hey, if this guy, if all goes well, maybe he can play for 10 years. Like if it's an athletic big, I say, hey, he can go play. And then in the Asian markets in particular, in Korea and Japan and Southeast Asia, that type of position is very valuable and guys play for a long time, right? Maybe if you're staying in Central Europe, it's a different length. But the reason why it's so difficult is because there are so many variables that affect that outside of just how good they are. And one of those variables that I need to identify is how much they love the game. Right? Not just how good they are at basketball, because there's been guys that have gone overseas and say, hey, this is great. They make, $250,000 over 2 years and they're doing great. And they say, hey, like, I don't like this, right? Like Aaron Kraft plays for several years. Hey, I'm going to go to med school. Well, okay. That, when you start to project out how long these guys are playing and the ROI from a business perspective, that comes into play. And then the contract side, like overseas is very different. It depends. There's very rarely 2 or 3 year deals. Once you start to go up the pyramid a little bit in terms of the level of the leagues, to most first division, sometimes there's a 1+1. At the EuroLeague level, they're longer and they're more lucrative. In China, they're obviously more lucrative. But at the lower levels, it's always a 1 year deal. And most of the times that doesn't really mean anything. Nothing's guaranteed. So they can get cut 1 month into it. And, then it's like, hey, where do I go from here? So it's so volatile.
So we often talk about, we cover the NIL quite a bit and we try to make sense of it. We've actually had a couple different shows on it. I don't think Randy or myself has ever really understand. I mean, I'm still fuzzy on what it means for anybody. The numbers that you hear probably aren't the real numbers. I mean, Saban at one time said his quarterback was making like $1 million or something. And I just can't imagine that a guy that's never thrown a football gets $1 million deal. Maybe, I don't know. But Randy,
they were getting $1 million before NIL. So what's the difference?
I mean, I said when it came out, now they're just allowed to bring truck up to campus, right?
Yeah, right. And Randy, you said that the number one guy at Michigan is a basketball player that doesn't start, but is a business major.
Play. Yeah, he doesn't play.
But he's a business major, and he went out and got himself his own deal. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, he's a basketball player. Adrian Nunez is his name, and he's a guy who doesn't play for Michigan, but he's their top NIL guy at the university, which is amazing.
That is. I mean, it just shows you that you are really, Kevin, you're sifting through a bunch of things and trying to understand a constantly moving industry, right? I mean, is it
absolutely
constantly moving? So the minute you think you finally have something figured out, you got to go back and kind of reevaluate things and try to project out the next 3 to 5 years. Where are you seeing the industry going?
So it is very difficult and it's constantly moving, but I think that's an opportunity as well, right? So you look at some of these numbers and you're wondering like, what in the heck, where is this value, right? But for these companies out there, like what defines value? Like what is somebody's price? It's the price that a company is willing to pay, right? And so like
Right.
if a company says, hey, this guy or this girl, I don't care if you're the projected number 1 draft pick for the NBA, or if you're a golfer at a school down south that nobody knows your name, or if you're on the women's volleyball gymnastics team, if you have a following and you can create value for a company for whatever reasons, whether you're selling their product or getting exposure in a certain market, I mean, that's the market value, and that's rightfully earned by players, and that's, I think, what obviously should have been done long ago. There's a gray area, and there's obviously questions, but what's to stop somebody from obtaining their market value off the court, right? So, I mean, again, I think it could go many different directions, but I think it's just going to open the opportunities for players to not make millions of dollars, because we know, like, I always do this. If you're watching the video, it's with my hands making the pyramid up top.
Yep.
Yeah, the 1%, 2% of the athletes are going to make a lot of money. Everyone else, not so much. But
Right.
why can't the Kevin Tarcas of the world, like, would I have made a Gatorade deal? Absolutely not. But why can't I go to the local bar and say, hey, like, the fans kind of enjoy me. I got a lot of friends on campus. Why don't I bring in 50 friends every Friday night? They'll have beers and we'll do a podcast, and like, let me get 5% of the revenue.
Yep. Yeah.
In the past, that wasn't allowed. Now you can get creative.
I'd go with the flat dollar fee. But just that's me.
Hey, you're underestimating the amount of friends that I have.
Yeah, rickshaw. So one of the things I just started thinking about was, in theory, I brought up St. Bonaventure, and I keep going back to this. Is it possible for you to walk in that gym, sign all 5 guys overseas, and have them go to the same team, and then they're all still playing together? Wouldn't that be something? I think that would be amazing. Wouldn't that be something? You bring the same 5 guys playing together again for another 4 years.
It would be
They'd be
amazing.
pretty good.
So a couple things go into that. One, it depends on where, right? If you're talking about the first division of Germany, yes, because you can have 6 import players. If you're talking about the second division of Italy, which the top teams have 4 times as much budget as the bottom teams in the first division Germany, you're allowed 2 imports. So you can't do that.
Oh, they do the
Right?
same thing.
So
as the CFL.
It depends. Yeah, it depends where you're going. It depends on the team. It depends on if you're at the higher level, who's going to be on the roster. I think it would be very interesting, but I'll tell you right now that, if there's 5 players that are good enough to play at a high level overseas, the team can't afford it. Right. Like, it's kind of that window. And then if you go above that, then it's like, well, they're all rookies. So, there are guys on the open market that they can afford or get better value for than paying, $250,000 a year for 5 players. Teams would rather spend $120,000 for one really, really, really good player, and then their local player that might not be as good as that 3rd or 4th or 5th St. Bonaventure player, they're paying $20,000. So it's.
And let me ask you. I mean, with all the traveling you do, with everything that goes into, and the time consumption that it goes into what you're doing, do you get a chance to still follow a lot of college hoops? Do you get a chance to enjoy the games and kick your feet up and enjoy them at all?
I mean, I try. I try to enjoy every game that I'm watching. I think it really depends on the type of year I'm having. I mean, now more so than the past 3 years. I've definitely, pulled back the reins on, like, I got to recruit and evaluate and identify 24/7. Right? It's like now I want to go to a game, and like, if a guy's good at basketball, then he's going to be on the radar for me, for other agents. I've spent more time just enjoying the game and really looking at the other stuff. Back to square one when I think we first started talking. It's like, even if they're good, I have to identify if they love the game. So I'm looking at things like how they react when the ref makes a bad call. Do they show up early? Are they in warm-ups with their headphones on, not talking to a single teammate? Not that guys can't be good if they do that, but those are like little things. How many charges they're taking if they don't play? Are they on the bench clapping? All those things. I try to, like, that's what I enjoy because that's what I look for. So yeah, I try and enjoy, whatever city I'm in, and especially when I'm overseas. I mean, it's, I've been to cities overseas. Like, you know what? I'm just gonna watch this at the local bar. I'm gonna enjoy this culture because that's important too. If I'm gonna recruit a kid and say, hey, I want you to sign in Budapest, Hungary, I better have been there.
Yeah.
Because I need to know what the city's like.
So I don't know if you've picked up on this yet, Kevin, but this is very interesting in this podcast because if you look, we're split into 4 sections here. But the bottom 2, Rickshaw, Randy, and Drew, You have a hardcore Michigan Wolverine fan sitting next to a hardcore guy that goes to Ohio State right now. And it is funny that neither one of them have said really too much in the last half an hour. What questions do you have, guys? I know that we're not going to bring up the Ohio State Michigan game that's coming up, but we won't bring that up. What questions do you have for Kevin about the business side? I mean, he's really had a pretty interesting run in the way he's navigated to where he is professionally.
Yeah, I would ask Kevin, what's your travel schedule like, Kevin? I mean, I heard you just say that you've been to some of these places, but how often are you traveling?
As much as I possibly can. That was the goal about 4 years ago when I started. So I, took out loans, still take out loans, reinvest all the commissions I get just to travel. I mean, I've been to 36 countries, which is unbelievable, like unbelievably blessed to be able to travel the world and watch basketball, right? From Southeast Asia to Europe, and kind of everything in between. And so before the pandemic, obviously that shook things up a little bit, but I would say from 2016 to 2019, 20, it was almost 50% that I would go over for 2 months. I'd take a backpack and a small suitcase and I'd just hit the trains and hit the planes and, spend $12 to sleep in a hostel and then go to the next city. And I was just exploring and just building relationships and learning the markets really. And so, since the pandemic, obviously it's been a little bit different. I've spent a bit more time here in the States, but that's also the tough part that I've been trying to figure out is like, once you get involved in the scope of the international basketball world, like even for some of the Michigan, Ohio State talk, it's like, well, shoot, man, I've kind of been watching EuroLeague, then I'm watching low level, then I'm watching G League, then I'm watching high school, then I'm watching college, then what about NBA? And I'm like, there's not enough time to watch it all. And so it's been really interesting to kind of navigate that path as well. But again, if I can be somewhere in person, this kind of goes to also answer your question, Drew, from earlier, just show up. Like, I can't tell you how many people are like, they see me and I don't know who you are, but hey, nice to meet you. I see you everywhere. I'm like, well, something's working, Yeah.
Very cool. So when you go and you're over traveling, I mean, when the ball's bouncing, do you pick it up and start shooting and kind of get your adrenaline going a little bit?
Absolutely. I try to play pickup in every city that I'm in. If I'm bringing something, making sure something fits in my suitcase, it's my basketball shoes. I've actually in Barcelona a few times because for whatever reason, during that trip to Barcelona, it's one of my favorite cities, like I'll have a small bag and I've gone to hopefully they're not listening, but I've gone to the Foot Locker and bought a nice new pair of I forget what it was, Kobe's or something, and went to the park, played for a couple of days, went and returned them. I do that. I just kind of repeat that wherever I am because it fills up a lot of space in the suitcase sometimes.
There's a business tip. There's a business tip. There's a business tip.
But and again, I think back to what we talked about early. Like, did I ever think about playing overseas? I never really did because I didn't know the business. But I will tell you that some of these places I go, I'm like, coach, I don't need to change. Like, put me in, please. Put me in the game, right? And that's not, at high levels at all. But second and third division somewhere. I mean, I can still shoot. I'm not going to give you much defense, but I can still shoot. That's for sure. I can shoot, pass, and dribble, right? Yeah. Who said defense wins championships? I don't know.
I got a few questions for you, Kevin. So you talked about earlier how some of these people are making like $500 to $1,000 a month. When you're talking to them, is this more like a bet on yourself, like show up first year and earn a bigger contract next coming years?
Absolutely.
Is that what you're trying to convince them and
absolutely
get them in that
and for sure, it's a bet on yourselves. I mean, I bet on myself. They have to bet on themselves. I have to bet that they bet on me, which sometimes is difficult because I've had clients where I bust my ass for 24 months, or I had a guy that didn't get a job for 14 months after college, and I put him in Portugal for $500 a month. After I sent him to a China tour, and then I said, look, I know it's not going to be sexy or fun, but I think you could be one of the best guards in the league. I think you can really give yourself some exposure, to which he did, and won MVP. And then that next summer was COVID, and players got antsy, and he fired me, and he went with another agency and went back to the same league. And it's like, I have to bet that they have to believe in me, but ultimately the bet is on themselves, right? I can't put the ball in the basket for them. But if they do that, and there's no formula of like go to this league, then you go to this league, then you go to that league. But if you go and you're good, and you're top 5 in scoring, and you do things that that teams like, more often than not, you're going to get yourself an opportunity at the next level, or at least some sort of bump in that league, and then and then that just keeps snowballing into the next. But ultimately, back to what you said, bet on yourself.
When you're also looking at players in college, high school, whatever, do you ever say like, oh, this player would play great in Australia, England, Germany? Is it like different? I know like international is obviously a different play style, but do you see like a variance in play style throughout countries?
Definitely. So, I mean, to this day, I still will admit I need to get better at that. And I don't think anyone's perfect at that because it's very difficult. Every single league varies. But let's say I'll give an easy example like I gave before. If there's an athletic big guy and he's on any team, in the States, I don't care what level, and he can dribble, he can walk, he can chew gum at the same time, and he can put the ball in the hole and protect the rim, there's a spot for him somewhere. And then if I see a player that, is like a really good role player, then maybe he belongs, or he would fit best in a league that has multiple imports, right? Versus the second division of Italy, or even a league like the third division of Germany, which is solid. That's only one import. So that type of player, I need to be looking at and say, hey, this guy needs to go get buckets. If he doesn't score 25 points a game, their team's losing because he's the only import. Right. So based on every league that is different, that's kind of how I try to organize my thoughts on their projections on where they can go and what their market value is.
Yeah.
Wow. Seems like, again, it's very time consuming. It's not something that I think Randy or I would have the energy left to do, to be honest with you. It is this also might be a young man's game to get there. It just seems it's a lot more work than I think people understand, and it is a lot of network building.
It is, but I think the guys that are at the top now, right? They were once young guys that busted their ass. Yeah. Every once in a while, guys get lucky, and they use and trust me, as you know, capital speaks, right? So money speaks. You could be anyone, and you can say, hey, or you could be lucky, and your brother, or your best friend, or your college roommate is LeBron James, and not to put down Rich Paul. He's doing what he's done. He's built an empire, but he also had a different opportunity than someone else has, and so everybody has their story, and they work hard at it. And everyone's going to be perceived as, hey, you got lucky, or LeBron James is your best friend. I mean, he's built an empire. But again, it's just there's no formula. But you're right, a lot of it is showing up, betting on yourself, time consuming, very risky, long-term ROI. And for me, with no wife, no kids, no mortgage yet, that's kind of what I'm betting on.
The interesting thing, I think you just brought it up, but the story that I've heard, and it could just be a rumor, was that LeBron James went to like a concert or something. Rich Paul was on the street doing the shirt sales, sold him a shirt, and they met and they talked, and then got reintroduced or something years later because he liked his hustle, and that's how he ended up representing him. I don't know how much of that is true, but that's like the rumor that I've heard. It's amazing, I think, with all your travel in how that happens. It's like you said, just go show up and be there, and that kind of leads to hopefully some success.
I don't know the exact story. I think his childhood friend was Maverick Carter, and somehow Maverick Carter might have got linked up with Rich Paul. I forget the exact story, but you're right. Like there's it goes back to relationships, and one guy gets introduced to another, and how Rich Kleiman met Kevin Durant and just kind of built the trust. And once a player trusts you, I mean, nowadays trust is really hard. Trust and loyalty are very difficult because it's the instant gratification. It's everybody wants things now. They want that 5-year deal now, the multi-million-dollar contract now, and again, when there's a lot of money involved, grass is greener on the other side. So another agent comes in and says, hey, I'll get you this. Oh, really? No way. Okay, cool. And then it's like, well, man, so it's tough.
I just want to let you know, Kevin, I am a free agent, FYI. So
send me some film. I'll take a look.
It's going to be on the old, you remember the old
it'll be on
roll film? It's going to be
like the 8mm film. Right.
love
Oh,
it. I
man.
love it.
All right. Listen, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about today's lineup and board. And we want to say thanks again to Kevin for coming on, man. It's been enlightening, and it's a very interesting story because we talk about all these players half the time, and we're talking about the schools. So it's very interesting to know, and I'm sure we'll have him back on and talk some more in the future. But thank you so much for coming on, Kevin. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate
So what's it like playing Sport Hitters? Whether you're at your favorite bar or just anywhere. Sport Hitters' unique challenge brackets offers players a new way to play. Sport Hitters allows you to pick your teams and challenge friends, family, and rival players, all for real money. And best of all, now it's every sport, every day. You can get the app exclusively at sporthitters.com. Sport Hitters, challenge on.
All right. Okay, guys. So I just sent you guys some invites to today's challenges. And today's board is pretty crazy. So I mentioned I kept mentioning the school that I like, which is St. Bonaventure. Make your selections. So which is St. Bonaventure, and that they're one of my teams for today.
Do you want me to make my selections now, or you want me to tell you what my selections are as I make them?
No, make your selections, and then I'll kind of go through them.
I mean, I can even give you that advantage of telling you what I'm taking up front. I feel that confident.
I've already made my pick, so it doesn't really matter.
Oh, okay.
I don't need the advantage to beat you. This is the beautiful thing of Sport Hitters.
Right.
It allows us to show the words behind it. We can say whatever we want, but then it's time to come out and see. Now, with that said, I believe you did win last. What are we on Tuesday? So you won on Thursday, Randy.
I also won Sunday's 11-player challenge.
What was Sunday? Oh, our
the NFL playoffs.
The playoffs. Okay, so you won that. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to put it out there that USC is on my no-touch list for the rest of the year because the only reason I didn't win Thursday is because they could beat Stanford at home. So
yeah, well, there you go.
They got beat. They got beat twice in 2 weeks by Stanford, and then I think Stanford went and got housed by UCLA the next game.
We got to help Drew out here. I mean, he's a rookie. Drew, underdogs are king on Sport Hitters.
Yeah,
underdogs are king.
Well, first of all, home dogs are very good. Listen, he made a big mistake in taking 3 road favorites the first day, and that didn't work out too well for him. So don't tell him to start taking road. I
won Thursday challenge with road favorites. So come on.
That is true.
Yeah, but they were and you are absolutely right. I will say this, and I say this a lot. You'll win once, you might win twice, but over the course of time, you're going to be well below 50% if you bet road teams in college sports. Well below 50%. So when you do win, that's fine. That's like a TikTok thing. Here's the new TikTok thing. Jump on there when you win and tell the world you're a professional handicapper. And then when you lose, start a beef with somebody else on TikTok, because that's what goes on these TikToks all day long.
Oh, yeah.
But
whatever.
So listen. So we're all right. So we're in. That's how easy it is. Listen, this is what Sport Hitters is all about. It's picking these games. Now, there's some interesting games, and I kind of want to get into some of them. I know. Here's one right here. So MSU at Maryland. Here's an interesting game because we keep talking about Maryland, and I keep talking about the same guy at Maryland, Eric Ayala. Is this a must-win for Maryland?
Yes, absolutely.
I would say so.
This is kind of the last opportunity for them to make a name outside of winning the Big Ten tournament. They have to build a resume outside of that, right?
Right.
And this is kind of, with the debacle that's happened to them the last couple of weeks, would be maybe their last big opportunity. Now, do you guys think? I think they have a chance in this game. I feel like they actually have a legitimate shot at this game.
Did you take Maryland in your bracket?
I did not.
Yeah.
I did not. I think they have a shot. I didn't say I was crazy enough to take him, but I do like Eric Ayala. I like Ayala in the way he plays.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, I mean, listen, if your best player is, to me, if your best player is a freshman and you're on the road, I think you're susceptible in every game. Yeah. And right now, MSU's best player is a freshman. So I think they're susceptible to get beat in every game.
I think Gabe Brown is their best player. But, yes, I think their second best player is Max Christie, who is a true freshman. Yes.
And I think that makes them beatable. Now, does that mean I'm going to go out there and run out there and lay the money on them in the book? No. But I'm definitely not taking MSU at home.
Right.
Look at this.
I'm struggling here because I can't take Michigan, even though I know they're going to win that game. I only get 5 points. It's almost like a waste of one of my 3 picks.
Yeah, I don't understand how Michigan could be 15.5 point favorites against any team in the Big Ten. I know it's what.
Well, they beat them by 20 something on the road last time they played. That's why.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like after that last game, even the Northwest.
I love this. Ohio State goes off. It almost wins one big game, and now he's bad talking Michigan.
Well, here's the thing about
we'll
Michigan.
Settle this on the floor.
The Michigan game is so inconsequential. I didn't even put it in our things to look at. Who are they playing? Who are they playing? Who's Michigan playing?
They're playing Nebraska, the Little Sisters of the Poor. It's almost like one of your brackets. I mean,
come on.
What were yours last week? I forget the name of the schools. They were so inconsequential.
Oh yeah, I had Wagner, and Wagner won by 15. But then I had not St. Mary's. I had one of the schools.
It was some.
Yeah, it was something like that. I'd have to go back and look, but
I think it was Sacred Heart.
Sacred Heart. Yeah, I did. I had Sacred Heart and maybe like Canisius or something else. But great schools. Wagner, by the way, ended up covering that line. Listen, here's another good game tonight, I think, right? Kansas at Iowa State. So this is another interesting game to me because the guy that I always worry about for Kansas is now going on the road, and that's Brown. And I think Iowa State wins this game. Do you guys have anything?
Wow.
I think Iowa State wins this game.
Did you take Iowa State in your bracket?
I did not.
See, you throwing these out there, you don't even take them. Yeah.
I think Iowa State wins this game. Well, I went pretty smooth in my bracket. So I've got the 3 teams I took were Virginia over BC.
Yeah.
St. Bonnie. I got St. Bonnie's tonight. So St. Bonnie's is at home. And St. Bonnie's is playing Davidson. And I think that's the game of the night. So I think St. Bonnie's and Davidson is going to be a great game. I think you're watching it. You watch that game, you might see 8 guys that can that since we were just talking with Kevin, you might see 8 guys that are going to be playing overseas or in another continent next year because first of all, again, St. Bonnie's has those 5 guys, but those 5 starters for St. Bonnie's, they play like almost the whole game. They don't come out of the game. If they get in any foul trouble, they are in a lot of trouble because the backup for any one of the backups for that team probably played JV in high school.
So I heard you talking up Providence today, and you know that they're underdogs tonight to St. John's, right?
On the road, yeah. On the road.
Did you take Providence?
I did not. It's a road game.
It's
a road game.
You never take.
Randy, I'm disciplined. What did you?
You did take Providence, Drew?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I just feel like there's a ton of value. They've won 8, 9 straight, something like that.
Yeah, he does. He's got 11.25. He's got Texas Tech. He's got we picked that Auburn-Alabama game. That's going to be an interesting game. All
right, I just submitted my picks, just FYI.
So I've got Virginia, St. Bonaventures, and Texas Tech. Okay. I'm a big believer that Texas Tech is going to be a pretty good team come tournament time. I think they're going to be a tough team to deal with in the tournament. I like St. Bonnie's at home. I like that starting 5. And to me, Virginia was like my easy pick because they're playing BC. It was more.
I like that. I was going to take that until you told me you took it, and then I backed off it because I didn't want to overlap. But I took Western Michigan. I took Miami of Ohio, and I took Michigan State tonight.
You got Western Michigan? Did I hear that right? I didn't hear that right.
Michigan, 805. Yeah, they're like 2 divisions above St. Mary's or whatever those schools you were picking are. Yeah.
Who's Miami playing?
Miami's playing Kent State, so it's a MAC game. Yeah. So I picked 2 MAC games and a Big Ten game.
You took Michigan State on the road?
I did. Yeah, because I want them to lose. If I bet on them, there's a good chance of that happening. So
There's some good stuff right there, man. All right, so let's take a look at this game. Let's take a look at the Alabama-Auburn game. Listen, if Quinn Early and what's the other guy's name for Alabama? They have a second guard too, but Quinn Early is one of their guards. They have a second guard. Listen, if they're hitting their shots, they can beat anybody. They literally can beat anybody.
Alabama would be a good dog pick tonight, I think.
Is Auburn that good? Is Auburn that good? I don't know. I don't know how good Auburn is. I haven't seen a full game. I don't know. I'm still a believer that in the SEC, the team to watch is going to be Arkansas. So I believe that the team to watch in the SEC, coming out of the SEC, will be Arkansas come tournament time. This game, I'm looking for the whole board. I love the board tonight. I love what the games are, and I think that we're in for a good night of basketball where we might not see a lot of blowouts, but we should see a lot of great games. Texas Tech. What do we got on the line on that? 4.5. Jones and the other guy for Texas. Those two guards at any one day can start playing well. That was a team that should have been a top 5 team at the beginning of the season, Texas, and they haven't lived up to what they've been doing, what they were supposed to do preseason. They just had a big win over the weekend. So I'm looking at these games and I'm saying this is a good game, but watch out. A10 basketball, St. Bonaventure, Davidson. You're going to have one team that's going to shoot the lights out from 3, another team that can't shoot more than 35% for 3, with 5 starters that have been playing together for 3 years. And it's going to be a very interesting game because I think the winner of that is the one that will end up winning the A10. VCU is up there. Dayton is going to fall. And then I think your top 4. I think the top 4 teams that win, top 4 teams in the A10 all make the tournament this year. Yeah, VCU.
I've come to. I think I understand why you love Shaka Smart. I think I finally get it.
Because he wins.
Because he's a short ball guy. That's why he's a short ball guy. That's why you love.
He's not bald. You don't know who Shaka Smart is if you think he's bald, man.
He's bald, man.
He's not bald.
Yeah.
Ed Cooley's more bald than Shaka Smart. He's just got a couple bald spots. There's no way he's bald.
All right, he aspires to being bald. Then whatever. But yeah, that's why you love him. You know what? I do not understand the Shaka Smart love. I mean, he's been moderately successful at all the places.
Moderate. No, he was. First of all, he was at VCU. He was very successful at VCU. Successful at VCU.
For VCU, maybe, yeah. But I mean, their program never got over the hump.
In Texas, name a coach that will be good in Texas that where by the 3rd game, if your team doesn't win by 30 points, they're saying fire this coach. That's what you walk into when you walk into Texas. You are walking into a nightmare because the alums are all rich oil guys who think it's very easy and everybody should win and win quickly. And so any coach that walks into Texas is walking into what I think is a nightmare. So good for him to get out. Look at Bird. This team is set to be pretty good with the players that Shaka Smart recruited. He's got 2 good point guards or 2 good guards.
Shaka Smart got great players at Texas. He got great players at Texas.
So does Kansas. So does Baylor. So does, you're talking Texas Tech. And there's not a microscope. You're not under a microscope at Marquette or VCU like you are. It's like coaching the Yankees. When you go to Texas, it's kind of the same thing as being a coach of the New York Yankees, where you are under a microscope from the get-go, and you can't make them happy no matter what. I don't even think that's a top 20 coaching job right now because of the expectations that are so quick. You don't have a 3-year window to develop your players. That guy look at what he's done in 2 years. Look what Shaka Smart's done in his 2nd year at Marquette. Look at Marquette's team. They have one guy that can make an outside shot. One, Morcell. Outside of that, none of them can shoot. None of them can shoot at Marquette. They play organized chaos on defense, and it just looks phenomenal because they're beating good teams in tough places to play. So I do, and if you watch the way he talks to his players, it's very personable, I want to say. It's a very different coaching style than anybody has out there. It's very man-to-man, personable, not demonstrative. There's a lot of coaches, which I like Bobby Knight. I thought Bobby Knight was a great coach. He's the antithesis of Bobby Knight. He literally gets in there. He's the calmest guy on the court. And he's like, hey, let's just take our shots, man. Let's not take their shots. But the funny thing is, when they're running up and down the court, he's one of the most animated coaches. He's over there stomping his feet, clapping his hands, trying to get them, to do things. I do. I'm a big Shaka Smart believer. I'm a big believer in his.
I think we've established that.
Well, I would say something about Michigan, but I don't know what I could possibly say because what are we going to say?
I got my Michigan armor on right now. There's nothing you could say that could hurt me. But I will say this.
Are you actually rooting for Harbaugh to be on a late night flight right now to Miami instead of going to Minnesota?
I'm a little mad at Jim Harbaugh right now. It's not a good day to ask me. I'm a little mad at Jim Harbaugh right now. In fact, I quit calling my dog Harbaugh this week. Just because of that.
Little Harbaugh.
Right.
Little Harbaugh.
Little Harbaugh is not being called Little Harbaugh.
But they're saying you're going to get Rule. They're saying you might get that guy Rule, who's a really good college coach, right, from Carolina. He would be a really good coach.
I'm still 85% sure that Jim Harbaugh is staying in Ann Arbor. But and the reason I have reasons for saying that because I've talked to people who know Jim Harbaugh personally, and they assure me that he is staying.
I feel like just going out for an in-person interview just
I think he's doing a couple of interviews, but I think he's looking for the future. I don't really think he's looking for right.
See, I think I want him to stay, so it's all right.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the best record against Ohio State, does he?
No, he just got
that. I know he's 1-0 in the last 12 months. So
yeah, who's 1-0? ASU against Michigan football.
Yeah, I know. I walked right into that. I walked right into that. Okay.
All right. So listen, we got a great lineup tonight. We're gonna have great brackets. We got a great lineup tonight. Ohio State's they get the night off. Well-deserved rest after that. I was very impressed with that performance on Sunday. They might not have won it.
I thought they played very well. Yeah.
And I don't think Purdue played bad. I don't think Purdue played bad to leave them in the game. I think Ohio State went out there and played one of their best games of the year and showed maybe might have to relook it. Is the Big Ten the best conference after watching those games this weekend? Because there's a very good chance that the Big Ten now, I might have them ranked higher than the Big 12 as far as conferences go. Kansas didn't look good on the road recently. And
Arizona didn't look good last week.
Was
Arizona
home when they lost by 20?
Was that?
I think it was home. Yeah.
Yeah. So you brought up Arizona. Listen, they're going to be good in the tournament. And right now, if UCLA doesn't turn this thing around, or USC doesn't turn it around quickly, I've got no problem if only 2 teams end up going to the tournament for the Pac-12. That's how down I am on the Pac-12 this year. It is beyond frustrating. ASU, worst team in 32 years. See ya. Don't bother me this year with ASU. The Washington State.
Didn't they win? Didn't they just win the other night? I thought ASU. They had somebody down. Somebody big down.
They lost by 15 points to U of A. They lost by 15 points. They
I was
watching
that game and they were up, and I thought maybe they pulled that game.
They lost by 15. They couldn't score in the second half. They go through these scoring droughts. They can't score.
I watched the last 15 minutes of that game, and that was awful basketball. Just terrible turnovers. They were like 1 for 5 free throws. That was the first Arizona State I've watched this year, and it was tough to watch.
It's horrendous. Our best players are playing for Grand Canyon College. One's playing tonight for Nebraska. Another one's playing tonight for Kansas. There's our starters are all playing for different schools right now. So we get a bunch of guys out there, and they go through these huge scoring drops. Like I said, Washington State held them to 29 points for the game. That's impossible. That should be impossible. And so if you start matching up with Washington beating Washington State and all these upsets, to me, they're not upsets. They're just bad teams beating up on each other now. So, but the 2 top teams in the Pac-12, both teams can go to the Final Four. That's one thing that we can see. But you can probably say that about the Big Ten, Big 12, and probably the SEC. So I think the Power 5 schools all the Power 5 schools have at least 2 teams that when the tournament starts, you could see making the Final Four. And
I still like Arizona as one of the top 5 teams, even though they haven't played well in the last week or so. But
I
still
think
like
they're
them as a
playing.
top 5.
I think they play UCLA at home this week. I think that follow-up game is this week against UCLA.
Yeah.
Listen, I still think UCLA is a team to beat by a long shot on some teams. Purdue, we talked about. I'm not too impressed with Gonzaga. I don't think I actually don't think
They're the same
Gonzaga's going to
team
be
every
there.
year, right?
Yeah, I don't think they'll be there this year. I don't think they'll be there this year. Listen, I was really impressed with Ohio State, and so they're all of a sudden, if Liddell keeps playing like that, he did, and I'll give you credit, Drew. He hit some threes. I didn't see that out of him, but he not only did he hit them, he was aggressive in taking them. He was looking for them. So he didn't just take them late in the shot clock. He was aggressive. So I'm a believer in that I moved the Big Ten up, maybe not of the best conference, and with Wisconsin, with Purdue, I think Iowa's played themselves out. Randy, would you say Iowa's played themselves out of the tournament right now?
I don't have a lot of good things to say about Iowa. They still don't play any defense. So,
and does Rutgers still have an outside shot?
Not in my mind, they don't.
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, we're running out of time, but give me, Mitch and Drew both, give me your top 5 college basketball teams right now.
Ooh.
Go ahead, Drew.
I would say Auburn. I'd put Texas Tech in there. Put Baylor. Ooh. Still say Kansas and give me UCLA in there as well.
So basically, I'm gonna stick with the same. Most of the same. I got Kansas, Baylor. I got Kansas. Kansas, Purdue, UCLA. Those last two really are going to come down to neutral court, non-neutral court. I could see U of A in there if Tabellis is healthy. And I do like the way Baylor is actually playing, even with Akinjo. I think Akinjo is going to be a problem for them because last night he had a big game last night and helped them win. He took 17 shots. He got 25 points, but he typically takes a lot of bad shots and he thinks he has to try to win the game. When I think he's got other good players around him that he should be distributing the ball to. And to me, a guy that keeps helping them is Mayer. So if Akinjo stays under control, I could see them as a top 5 team. If not, no. I'm not a buyer in anything in the ACC right now. SEC, I'm not buying Auburn right now. Like I said, I'm still buying Arkansas is better than Auburn if they played on a neutral court. I would love to see the hectic style of Arkansas go up against the hectic style of Auburn, and I think Arkansas wins that. It wouldn't surprise me, though, if Villanova makes a run because I love Gillespie. My man Gillespie, been there. He controls that team, controls the whole flow of a game, and he can hit the threes. And he's like a little Stockton, but he's not really John Stockton. But he controls the game, and I think they just need one other guy to help out. But I would say those 5, Kansas, Baylor, UCLA, U of A, and Purdue would be my top 5 right now.
Okay.
What do you got?
I like Purdue, Arizona, Illinois, Auburn. That last spot, I'd probably throw in UCLA.
All right, so let's do this. We haven't done this in a while. Here we go. Okay, you're running up the window. You're going to make one play. You want to make sure it's a winning ticket. What are you taking tonight, Drew?
Texas Tech, 4.5. 13 at home. I'm riding them. Oh.
Okay, you're taking Texas Tech and you're laying 4.5. Randy, what are you doing?
Taking Michigan State on the money line.
Michigan State on the money line. All right, I'm going with my guys in St. Bonnie's. I think they're back. I like them at home minus the 3. I think they beat Davidson. I think Davidson gives them a good game, but and it's such an interesting game, this game, because you have Davidson who loves to hoist the 3 and St. Bonnie's who can't shoot the 3 but loves to get to the rim. I think it's just an awesome game. But I'm taking St. Bonnie's, win it by 7 to 10 points. Outside of that, let's have a good brackets, and let's see who's got bragging rights when we come back here. And just so I know, Randy, when does Michigan play again? I want to know when Michigan plays.
They play tonight. They play Nebraska tonight.
And what are they favored by?
It's like
15 and a half.
Is it 15? Yeah. It's
At home. At home.
Well, they just beat Nebraska by more than that on the road. So
All right. So let's go Alonzo Verge, former Sun Devil, suits up right now for Nebraska. Get out there, Verge, and hit some threes and cover that 15 points.
he'll need it. Oh, yeah.
All right. Listen, it's been fun, and we'll be back again on Thursday.